If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. Our guest today is Tania Harding. Tania's an eventing specialist. She's a competitor, trainer and coach. She's won up to and including 3-star eventing and spends her days riding, training and coaching. How are you, Tania?
I'm well, thank you, Lena. Thanks for having us on board.
That's okay, Tania. Good to have you here. Tania, we're going to start off with a favourite quote, get you straight into it. Have you got one for us?
Oh, I've got a couple. I'm a great one for quotes, depending on where my life is at any particular time. But at the moment, it's pretty much, I've got two. One is be a horse maker, not a breaker, which I really like. I like to sort of get a horse maybe isn't the bees and knees of everything, but turn it into something rather than get, a ripper and then end up that it's sitting on the shelf.
It's a bad term, isn't it? Horse breaking. Because a lot of people say they do breaking these days, but they're not. They're doing it very positively and positively for the horse. But it's sort of like the old Wild West breaking their spirit and breaking them down. And it's just not a very good term. Yeah.
I think it gets politically correct comes in on occasions with sort of natural horsemanship and a few other sort of things we can overanalyze the term of it. But I think, not so much the breaking part of starting them off, but, you often see, you can see competitors, different ones, juniors and other professionals and amateurs who go by a well-performed horse and 12 months down the track, it's not doing anything. I'd rather sort of try and have the other way.
Yeah. And all for getting schoolmasters, but don't get young, talented horses and have them as schoolmasters. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Learn the ropes.
Yep.
Learn your skills.
Yep. And learn where you're ready for. What's your other quote, Tania?
My other quote is, it sounds a bit dire, but would you be happy if your life ended tomorrow? Would you be happy with what you've done and how you're going? So that old live every day as if it's the last, which sort of, probably came in really effect. I hang on that one a little bit now after some personal things happened probably about 4 years ago, and it really did change the whole scheme of the way I look at the way I live.
Yep.
So that's definitely one that is an ongoing.
Yeah, good. Now, Tania, tell us about how you first started with horses, because you're sort of really living the dream now as far as horse people goes, and you've got the lifestyle that everyone wants. But what about your first memories? Do you remember what they are?
Look, I was pretty lucky. I had the opportunity from a very early age to be involved around horses. My mother and I lived together. She was a single parent. She had an interest in horses all her life. And so the opportunity was there. And by 4, I sort of had my first pony.
What was his name?
He was called Bancy.
Yep.
And he was actually a foal from my mum's handy stock station horse mare that she brought down from Queensland. So all the wrong things. There was a 4-year-old kid with a 4-year-old horse, or he's a pony. He only grew to about 13-1. He seemed ginormous to me at the time, but when we continued on as a partnership till I was about 12. And he was a very old school type of pony. He was an absolute ripper. He would always bark just harder than what I could ride. So as I got better, he got a little better too, and he'd still put me on the floor, and then I get better, and he'd give me a bit harder, and I'd still get put on the floor. But he finished with me when he was 12, and he went on to teach a number of other kids to ride. And he was wonderful to watch in hindsight when I watched him. And, he'd go with an absolute beginner and he'd try and catch them as they were swaying around on top, to having someone who was a lot more confident and then giving them, a helping hand out the door. So he was a really magical little horse.
And probably good that you're in a position where you had at least a little bit of horse people around you, when you were having problems with your horse. Yeah.
He was pretty good. Then my mum sort of bred Arabians at the time and had a couple of thoroughbreds off the track that sort of helped her start eventing later on in life, and that's probably where I first saw the sport in action.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just sort of, as you do, I had a couple of little horses as I came through school and things like that. So I've always had a horse of my own. And then we've just, some of the ones that we've bred have come onto a team where to take 2 or 3 to a show or something like that. So that was sort of my early years involvement in horses.
So was it that you were always going to have a career with horses? Did you always think that, or did you do anything else? What happened there?
No, it was never as a career. It was always something I did. I was fairly heavily involved in athletics as a junior as well, and that was quite competitive. So I balanced those two, and I was probably more successful at athletics than what I was at horses. And there seemed to be more of a career path for athletics than what there was with horses at the time. And no, I certainly, although I had a horse, I went and did the uni thing. And after uni, I travelled for a couple of years overseas and didn't really go and do the, working pupil in a stable. I was a teacher,
mm-hmm.
and so I used that as my travelling job. It worked very well as a travelling job. And, toured all through South Africa and Europe and based myself in England for quite a while. And probably felt quite good there. Financially, I was okay in England and ended up I wanted to go hunting. And it was probably the first time I ever worked in the horse industry that wasn't around home,
mm-hmm.
and picked up a job in a hunting yard in Northumberland. And I really enjoyed that. That was a really special time, a great opportunity. I had some very nice horses that they'd bought from Ireland, really good training and a very professional setup. So I was lucky to be involved in that before the hunt yard sort of changed post-2000. And, I sort of came home and had a look what was in the paddock and continued to enjoy the sport, but more on still had a mainstream job and those sorts of things. And it wasn't until I felt that I was financially secure that I then looked and went, I can actually now have a lifestyle job that I would like,
mm-hmm.
rather than what society thinks I should be doing.
Yeah. And as you say, you may not have, because when you were younger and at school, there wasn't necessarily a career with horses, but it sounds like the hunting yard inspired you a bit more to work with horses.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed it. It was very good camaraderie,
mm-hmm.
and it was an opportunity to see how something is done on a different level. And in Europe, everything's so close. So as much as I was over there, I wanted to see the Grand National. I wanted to ride through Hyde Park. I wanted to see Hickstead. There was a lot of things that I wanted to do, and they did all involve around horses. I just didn't go and work in a yard. And I think
mm-hmm.
that was good as well. I think going and doing other things in your life is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It gives you some life skills. It gives you opportunity, and it makes you really think about whether you do or don't want to do it, rather than it's just there in front of you, so
sure.
I'll just trudge on through.
Okay, now if someone did want to work with horses, or if you're employing someone, what sort of core skills or character traits do you think that someone needs to work in the horse industry?
They've got to have a good initiative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the really key skill set. Learn from day to day. Like, you don't have to know everything. You're not expected to know everything, but be willing to learn. Be very flexible. Yep. Horses are never on a timetable. So
sure.
If you're looking for that 9 to 5, or you've got to be finished by 3, or you've got to be home for something else, it's probably not going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of empathy, I think, is a nice little skill set to have as well. Be empathetic about what you're doing with the horse when you're asking what you're asking it to do, and go to that. We sort of look at here being able to want to learn, to continue to learn, whether that's horse skill sets as far as fencing, whatever it happens to be that's related to the industry. The more that you can put tools in your toolbox, the better that you are able to get through this industry successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you were saying about the fencing, or just the other skills, because not everyone that goes into the horse industry does exactly the same job. There are quite a few different jobs that still relate and revolve around horses, but there are different things, different parts of the industry.
Yeah, and depending on your location to how the industries can run, or what discipline you're actually going into,
mm-hmm.
that can also vary, what's sort of required. I know different stables, they have, people come in and do all sorts of, one person looks after, say, fencing, one person does the arenas, and, someone else is onto all the, running the bore and the watering system, and someone else, feeds the horses. You come here, you've got to do all of those.
Yep.
That's the difference of how it sort of runs.
Yeah.
There's not the ability just to call someone in as you need.
Yep.
Oh, wait, before you go, if you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
What do you think's the best thing about working in the horse industry, Tania?
I think it's a very lucky industry. There is, one of the best things is the variety of people who are involved. It doesn't matter what your general personality is or your interest, there is a niche that will match, and you'll find friends within the industry. I think one of the most positive things is that you get to work with one of the most non-judgmental animals around every day. So, each day that you go out, you've generally got a happy client meeting you at the gate, wondering what you're going to do with them for the day.
Yep.
So that's a pleasure. I think it's very rewarding if you're going about it. I find it extremely rewarding as a day, to go out. And I don't find it about work. I just find it, I'm not working anymore. I'm just living.
Yes.
And I think that if you enjoy the horse industry, you get to live life rather than work.
Yep. No, that's good. What about people who've influenced you and helped you a bit in your career?
I've got quite a few people. I like to continue to look for people who do things better than what I do. So I'm always watching, whether it be at an eventing comp and watching other competitors about how they train, how they warm up, what they're doing in their cool downs, around the stable block sort of thing. But probably the people who have influenced me the most are those who help with the before training, before you get to that elite level of understanding your horse, becoming a better horseman or horsewoman. And probably I've dabbled in different parts along, but these people have given me they've hit and they've given, some snippet of wisdom that has stuck, and I've been able to apply it either to the horse that I've had at the time or one that's come in to my life since then. So they're generally from a range of different backgrounds. They're just people who are able to get horses to do what they want without having sort of control over them, if you like, with equipment. So Zaylee Thomas is a lady up Queensland way, and she has worked in the movie industry for a very long time, training animals for movie sets and things like that. And I really enjoyed understanding some of the skill sets that she's used to train animals.
What sort of skill sets? Just give us a bit more of an idea then, because I'm sure that the listeners will be interested to pick up a few extra tips.
So I sort of used from her, not a clicker system, but being able to manoeuvre without having any gear on a horse. This is generally working with youngsters, but just being that probably the introduction, I'd been using Monty Roberts as my braking method at the time, and it was sort of running reins and long reining and, that sort of system. And I came to, David was like a complete left wing at the time. It was probably one of my first. I was about 17 at the time. And it was the first time I'd looked at being able to get a horse in a round yard, in a square yard, to be able to manoeuvre, be able to control where its feet went in a very simplistic way, be able to get it to stop, be able to get it to turn, be able to get it to follow me, be able to get it to, go back without actually having a physical hand on it. And probably the thing that worked with her, and then I went and saw Guy McLean work, Zaylee's was more, it had to happen now, because she's under a time pressure with when she has to have things on set, where Guy was like more understanding, read the horse more about what the horse is actually telling you. So from Zaylee, I learned a heap. Then I sort of went on and ran into Guy and watched a couple of his performances, and then really enjoyed those. So I went and found some more information about, and then started to learn more about the language of the horse, although it's not speaking English to you, what it is actually telling you through all its cues, whether it be its ears, its eyes, its flinch, swallowing, chewing, those sorts of things. And then I've had a couple of others who I've really enjoyed, and probably more recently I've sort of tapped in with Warwick Schiller. I haven't actually met Warwick. I haven't actually done a clinic with Warwick. I've just met someone who has, and without sort of saying, this is where we're going, learning from that person has been come into my life with my 3-star horse, who is a high flight animal. He's very educated. He's very good 95% of the time. And at 18 months ago, at the Melbourne 3-day, he'd been working beautifully 3 days before. He'd been working beautifully all the way up to the dressage. He'd worked beautifully for half of it. Mm. And then he'd have these little skip moments. And I just looked and went, here is a horse that is like obedient, well-schooled, at the top of his game. He knows what his dressage is, and he's just got this thing that does it. So I went looking for what I needed to fix. And Warwick's philosophy has come in. It's worked with him. So I now have a familiarisation that I do with him. And he's terrible. Like he at home, if I move anything, he knows. Mm. But I have a system now that gets him to actually deal with it rather than bottle it and then explode later on. So that's been a very interesting, and as I said, it's come into my life at a time when I needed that skill set, and it's worked, and we still use the 3 or 4 people that I've had behind.
Just talk a little bit more about that, about how you are working with your horse so that he gets through it rather than bottling it all up. If you can just talk a bit more about that and give us a bit of an insight there.
Yeah, look, it's probably there's a lot of background that we've done, but basically in the dressage world and the trainers that I'd had various different coaches. It was like, when he gets tight, put him lower, drive him forward, etc. But he's 17.2 and he's 600 kilos. Yep. So when he then decides that he can't control, he would always get out of the frame, and he doesn't do much. He just costs you 2 marks, but 2 marks here and there gets rather costly in our sport. So with Warwick, we went right back, and what we found was he never really assessed his environment. He would block it out and just go through, like he's a high flight animal. So we would just look to get him to assess, and if he did wish to run away, he could, but I would antagonise him in that way. And it wasn't like whip or anything else. It was just flapping. And then he would be represented to what it was that was the issue. While he went to it, I sat very quietly. And while he went away, he was antagonised again. Yep. But it sort of works in the opposite. So if he didn't want to work in a particular area, that was fine. But I would work him harder further away. And then I'd say, you can go over there and you can stand quietly. I don't want to be over there. Okay, well, you can go and work over here. So instead of trying to make him go to something, when he went away from it, that's when it became an issue for him. If he went to the thing that he didn't like, he was rewarded. So at Adelaide this year, at the 4-star, it worked really, really well. It's a high atmosphere. There's a crowd, there's TV cameras, there's umbrellas, there's cross-country fences in the arena that are set up. They're all things that would normally be issues for him. And he tends, just having the judges sitting in their little boxes is just something that he gets tight. And you're trying to keep the horse as supple as you can. So in familiarisation, he doesn't get to walk with anyone else. He doesn't get any contact on the reins. And I let him just walk around that area, and he will beeline. So when we first started the familiarisation, he would beeline to the gate. So when he got to the gate, he would just get put in a little circle. I'd flap my legs, and then he would take me away, basically. To start with, he only takes me 10 metres, he comes back to the gate. Then he takes me 20 metres, then he brings me back to the gate. Yep. And eventually he just doesn't want to go to the gate. So then he goes along, and then he'll realise, oh my gosh, there's an umbrella down there. Well, you can either go to the umbrella, he doesn't want you. He goes away, he gets antagonised, he goes back to it. And in the end, he's happy to stand anywhere in that arena. So then when I come out the next day to do the test, he's focusing on me and not focusing on what's that umbrella and what's this and what's that. So since we've started this about 18 months ago now, I haven't had, touch wood, any blowouts in our dressage. Yep. And that's been a real good focus point for us.
Wait, can you hear anything? No? That's because we're waiting for someone with a good quality horse product to be advertised here. If that's you, then contact us, horsechats@horsechats.com, and we'll send you the details. Thanks. Yeah. And when you say it like that, it makes sense, but it's a little different to what a lot of people are training, so just sort of having that method to work with that particular horse has been good. And, hopefully if any of the listeners have got a horse that they're working with that's having a similar problem, that they can say, right, well, I'm going to try this method and just see that it works okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as someone said to me, I think when you get desperate, you start looking for other things. When you sort of at your ends wits of why can't I get it to work? And this is going completely outside of my discipline training methods, if you like. It's not traditionally in this, but I think being well-rounded in your horsemanship allows you to get more from the horses that you've got. And that's why I've gone looking for something else from riders who are doing different disciplines to me.
Yep.
And thinking, I really like the way their horse does that. Yes, it's not in my sport, but their ability to get the horse to do that is only going to help me if I can get my horse to do that, if he can understand that concept.
Yes.
So that's sort of the way I look.
Yep. No, that's good. Now, Tania, tell us about the horse that you think has influenced you most within your career.
I've probably had a couple three horses I'd say. The horse that I've just spoken about has probably had a fairly influence. He's a horse that I've bred myself.
You might need to say his name as well.
Oh, Yorkshire.
Yep.
So he's probably, although to most people he looks pretty straightforward, he's just a little quirky, as most top-level horses are. So trying to fine-tune those little quirkinesses has been a real learning experience and probably taken me in different directions than what I probably ever would have thought. There's probably 2 or 3 other horses who have really influenced. So one was just a homebred horse who we got broken in by somebody else, and they nicknamed him Snake because he just wiggled and spooked and did all sorts of funny things. And they said he's never still, so just watch him, he slithers everywhere. And again, he wasn't an eventer or anything. He sort of went to show horse, but he was pretty tight. You had to sort of put your lycra suit on before you got on, because anything that flat was not on. If you swished a fly, you'd sort of end up on the deck. He'd nick off and things like that. So I had been working to educate him at walk, trot and canter and his leads and all that sort of stuff, and that was okay, but I still couldn't move. So if he tripped, that was fine, but if I moved on top, it wasn't going to work. So that's probably where I ran into Zaley, and we did work sort of stuff that I learnt with Zaley with him, and it was really the first partnership that I had with a horse where I just I didn't have any gear on him, and he would go where I wanted. I used basically sign language to maneuver him around and my legs and things like that, and that was something that really influenced that. He was a horse who mentally struggled with the bridle, with you flapping and that, and then to end up being able to just signal him where I wanted him rather than use reins was really, really rewarding, and just gave me another option to what I was going to do. The other horse that probably interest was my first attempt with a mare. Really talented, not traditional classical in the way that she did stuff, but jumped. She went straight to pre-novice. She sort of skipped everything else in between, and I took that a bit for granted. And I ended up, she was quite a long-bodied mare, very long over the loins. Suppleness wasn't in her vocabulary whatsoever. And anyway, I went and got some dressage help because I was quite naive about, the finer tips of dressage. And the person I went to sort of said, right, she's 7 now, she needs to be round, she needs to be shorter, you need to do this. And she was a good mare. She did that for that lesson. And I got probably 1 or 2 more rides out of that. And I kept sort of like, yes, this is what you've got to do. And yeah, right, that's going to be better. And on the 4th day, she said, no, thank you. You can do that, and I'm not really going to be any part of it. And she never forgave me for it. So I ended her career very quickly. So it sort of taught me that it only takes 5 minutes to break something. And it can take a lifetime to fix it. So I've always kept that little bit of knowledge just in my background when, I start to get a bit frustrated about something and think, no, I actually just need to walk away, because if I do the wrong thing here, it's going to bite me in the backside for quite some time. Yeah, so she was to the point where as soon as I brought the dressage saddle out, that was the end of the ride.
Yeah.
I was able to do flat work in a jump saddle, in a jumping environment. That was okay, but everything else she said no. And it was very defiant about it. So that was very unfortunate, but a big learning curve.
Yep. Yeah. All right. What do you think then, thinking about the horses that you've ridden, what do you think's your proudest moment?
My proudest moment is probably getting to Adelaide, entering the 4-star. To be lucky enough to have a horse to be able to take there is, I feel very blessed about that, because there's so many elements to try and get right to even get there. There was probably a lot of self-doubt about it. So that's probably my proudest moment. And then there's a lot of other ones that come along, like the first time you get a horse to do something, whether it be a youngster and they're a bit reluctant about something and you get them there, or they're not, that brave on the jump, and then they actually end up going quite well and making 1-star level or something. You think, wow, that's a huge achievement for that horse. They're probably a 95 centimetre horse or whatever, and here they are doing this for you.
Yep.
So I always get a little buzz out of those sorts of things. The first time I did clean flying changes, I'm very easy to please. Yeah.
I think it's like the lots of little moments as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think, and you talked a little bit about it before, challenges, thinking about where you are now, as far as spending your days riding and competing and coaching and, totally involved within that horse atmosphere, horse work. What do you think's been your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
From a competitive perspective, one of the biggest challenges I've had is just having a bit of self-belief to be able to do things at the higher level. I've never been, an overnight success. It's been a long, slow journey. So it's been that challenge of, yes, shall we go? I don't like to go half done. If I can, I wanted to have all the boxes ticked as much as I possibly can. So sometimes that becomes a little bit of an issue, because I'll down and go, oh, but I haven't done this or I haven't done that.
Yep.
So there's been a bit of a mindset of coming around and to change that and get people behind you who can help you with that, because it is, once you start to get through the higher levels, it can be quite daunting getting it all together and then thinking, geez, can I actually do this? It's not just about the cross country. There's a few other things that sort of you're trying to get the whole package together. So that's probably one. The other biggest challenge is actually just keeping a little bit of a balance on between the riding side and the coaching side, making sure that you're able to do both well and just establishing the timetable that allows that to happen. I sort of started when I first went into this that, being the flavour of the month, if you like, I was new on the scene in the area as far as being able to coach now, rather than my time when I was working full-time didn't allow for it at all. So I was like, oh, okay, I had to try and fit everybody in. But then I found that I was coaching so much that the horses were getting, I wasn't getting all the horses worked that I wanted worked. Yep. So I've sort of worked out now that I do mine in the morning, and then I'm open for lessons in the afternoon. And that seems to give a much better balance and a sanity for everyone involved. Everyone's getting what they need, rather than sort of doing one, trying to fit in another horse. Oh, I can't get that, and different little things like that. So,
yeah. Just going back to the self-belief, because we've got two different things here we're looking at. How do you think you've overcome it? What would you say to someone who needs it, needs to have that self-belief that you've got? What advice would you give them?
Find people who believe in you to support you. You definitely need that. You can't do it on your own. And sometimes your closest family and friends aren't those people. It might be a fellow competitor, because I always think, my mother, love her dearly, she would say it was great no matter what.
Okay.
And she'd say, you can do it. And I know she'd say you can do it. But as much as any doubt, sometimes you needed to hear it from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
The talking down, my biggest thing was the way I spoke to myself and the things that I would always pick a negative. Allow yourself to embrace the positives that you do and the things that you do well. Give yourself the compliment for it rather than, but I could have done that better and I needed to do that better. That's fine because you want to improve, but also allow yourself to give yourself a pat on the back for the good stuff.
Yep, that's good. That's good. And what about the balancing, the riding and the coaching? Is that just time management, or what sort of strategies would you use there?
I think time management's helped hugely. It's allowed me to keep better records for each of my riders. It gives a sense of structure for the day. Particularly, I like structure, so I didn't like having, someone was booked in for a lesson and then I had 45 minutes or I had an hour, but that didn't really allow. And then someone would arrive early and someone would arrive late, where now it's like no one arrives before 12 and it's up to me to organise that 6 or 7 hours of the morning and however that works. And then in the afternoon, if someone arrives late or someone arrives early, that's in that 6 hours, and that's fine because it doesn't influence the horses. So then I'm more relaxed about it as well. So you don't find yourself stressing those little minor stresses where you're just lifting your anxiety levels without you really realising, which is burning energy that you don't need to.
For sure.
You're already working hard enough.
Yep.
So, by taking that out, the day becomes just a lot more flow to it.
Yep. All right. Now, I'd like you to put your coach's cap on and think about a common fault that you see, with your riders, trainers, or even handling, and also how it can be fixed.
Probably the most common thing in what I see is people not reading the cues that their horses give them.
Mm-hmm.
So visually, they're not reading when the horse is telling you it's struggling, it doesn't understand, it's having anxiety about what you're doing, or it's not coping with its environment.
What sort of signals would a horse be giving? Like people not reading the cues, but people might not recognise the cues. What sort of things should they be looking for?
I'm speaking here not of high-level competitors. I have a lot of adult rider people coming through, pony club people, up to about the 1-star level. Just things like the horse's presentation of their eye, whether their eye is rolling back at you, and I use a lot of ear cues. So if I squeeze a rein and ask the horse to soften to a rein, I expect that an ear will either flick back and the horse will soften. But you'll get people who, the horse is wanting to stare off down the paddock or across the arena or something at whatever's caught its eye, and you're like, the horse has zoned you out and they haven't recognised that. And if you can read those signs, then you've got more understanding about what your horse is actually thinking at the time and whether it is tuned into you or to some other environment that's caught the attention. Things like reading when you're asking your dressage horses to work harder, that they do need a break from it. So you don't want to get to the point where you want to keep asking them to contribute to it, but you don't want to get to the point where they say, look, enough's enough.
Yep. So what sort of cues would they give when they're getting close to that point? Because they're very subtle, these cues. And I think if you don't actually talk about it, people don't know where to look, And
sometimes it's individual to a horse, so it's not common that every horse is going to do this. But it may be a swish of the tail. It may be just a little reluctance with a couple of strides of, I don't want to go forward. But you've got to read that as to your horse. It may be a locking on a rein. It may be that the horse is wanting to drop out. It may be that it does start to spook. So you've been going along really fine, the work's got really hard, or they're not understanding what you do, and then they decide that pot plant that's been there for the last 20 laps, whatever, is now an issue. Those little things that are coming in. Or you're going around and suddenly your horse is starting to show some tension, the neck's sort of risen, the ears are going forward. Yeah, there may be a distraction. You can ride that through without letting it get any further by identifying that there is a change in your environment. You need to support your horse in that area. Support your horse that, no, this is what it needs to do, not get distracted by that, or it's okay, we've got it under control. You can relax, horse.
Yep.
Just so that it doesn't become something else. rather than the horse goes, oh, there's something over there, I need to try, I need to go, and it just escalates further.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. I like the way that you're explaining it a bit more, so people then can start to look and start to realise about their individual horse. Yeah.
It is about your individual horse. Learn to read your horse and its cues, because not every horse is going to be the same as every other horse. No, otherwise, it'd be easy if it was like that.
Oh, that's right. Everyone would be riding and winning at 4-star. It'd be a piece of cake.
That's right.
Okay, now, have you got a book that you can recommend to our listeners? Something that's going to complement their training?
I've got 2 books that I refer to quite regularly now. I use the internet, I think I said to you earlier, Glass. I use the internet a lot to sort of flick for different ideas and what's sort of on the forums at the moment, and different sort of exercises that you could possibly incorporate into your training. But 2 books that I've been using at the moment, one is by Gillian Higgins, and it's called Posture and Performance. And I'm a very visual person, so I find this book really, really good. It's just full of pictures with the horses, and they've been anatomically painted. So they've got people riding them, leading them, doing all sorts of different disciplines, and it just shows where the bones are and where the muscles are at that point in time, and where the sort of, as you're asking your horse to rein back, where the balance is. They've got also the nervous system and the respiratory system going in there as well, a little bit, to show just how your horse operates underneath the skin level, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I just find that what I've been using it for a lot is working out, I've probably started to look more into body work with my own horse over the last sort of 12, 18 months than I ever have before. So I use this as a visual to come back to, now he's not lifting here, or he seems to be a bit sore there, but I'm not skilled. I'm still learning all through this area. So I'll come back and I'll say, so, what muscle is there, and where does it run, and where's its attachment, and where's its origin, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Or I'm asking him to do this, but I seem to have the shape slightly wrong. What am I doing to him anatomically? So I really do come back to that as a real reference point.
Yep.
And I said very visual and very, very clear, and easy to find what I'm looking for at the time.
Okay, good.
So
good.
That's fun.
Yeah.
And the second one is Beyond Horse Massage. It's an introductory book that I've got of the Masterson's method.
Who wrote that one? Do you know?
It's actually Jim Masterson.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just alleviating soreness and strain and tension within the horse that's interactive. So I've had a lady who has come into my world who has followed this method, and I've just seen some pretty remarkable results from the work that she's done on my horses. So I've just taken myself to learn more about it, and as I'm only up to the introductory stage of it.
No, that's good.
Probably an endless line to learn there, but that's where I'm to.
But you started on that path, and, when you finish that, who knows where it's going to go.
That's right.
And remember, you can find all the books recommended by our guests at horsechats.com/books. You can have a look at the guest page for the individual book they recommended, or just look at the recommended books by order of popularity at horsechats.com/books. So what have you got planned, though? What are you looking forward to?
So this year we've got a few things sort of incorporated. I've got some new horses, some youngsters that are really at the beginning of their competition career. They haven't even had a start yet. So I wanted to get those ones, the second half of the year, they would sort of really come into competition. We've also got the 2 older boys. One of those will be aimed for Adelaide.
Yep.
And we'll try and learn from what we did last year and go and have another crack and try and have a better result than what we did last year. And in the lead up, I'm going to head across and have a look at the World Equestrian Games.
Oh, good. Yep.
Yeah. So that I'm really looking forward to that. I sort of was hoping, as part of the reward of getting to Adelaide, I thought I'd go to Rolex at Kentucky.
And I think that's all to do with that self-belief, isn't it? Like you're thinking about, right, well, I'll just go to this place, and, that's part of, you've got to know what it is and all about it before you believe that you're really going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, no, we're going to have a look at all the different disciplines that people do at the cream of the crop, and see how it goes and what it's like in that sort of environment. And, it should be really good. No,
I think that's great. It's good. All right. Now, what about your philosophy with horses? Do you want to just sum that up?
Look, my philosophy with them is that there should be always learning. So for a horse, if he can learn one new thing each day, then that's all I ask for him.
Okay.
So whether he asks to do something better than what he's done it before, to understand it better, or to do something completely new for that day and learn that he hadn't done before. And I just keep working from that. So that's the way that I sort of go through it. It should be that he understands where it's coming from, and what is sort of is clear for the horse of what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
So he knows which direction he wants to choose to take.
And that's where the consistency in work comes in as well, isn't it? Like every time you work with a horse, they do a bit of improvement, but they're going to keep improving if you keep being consistent with them and keep working them and keep doing something with them every day.
Yeah. But I do like them that they do something that they haven't done, in that it's not the same old, because like my attention span's pretty short.
Yep.
So, and mix it up so that it keeps them keen to find what is happening for today.
Yep,
we consolidate on that, and then I just want you to try this.
Good.
So, that's where I sort of work with my guy.
All right. Now, Tania, how can people contact you?
I'm easily contactable through social media. I go through Facebook.
Yep.
People on Facebook through Tania Harding Equestrian Park, or Durama PH, which is a bit of a hard one to spell, but
look, if we put those details on your page, okay, so it'll be horsechats.com/Tania Harding, or just go and search for Tania or search for Harding. I'm sure that people will be able to find it, but say it anyway, because people might be there with a pen and paper ready to write it down. So Durama, JIRRIMA, and then PH for performance horses. So we've sort of kept that one as, it took a while for people to be able to pronounce it, and now down here anyway, it's people are fairly familiar with it, so we've sort of stuck with it. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. All right, Tania, well, thanks very much for talking to us today. Great talking to you. Great hearing about, the insights and about just the training tips, and people responding to those little cues. And I think if you can, what you've put out there, if people can start to think about the little cues that their horses might be giving them, I think that's good. And also when you were talking about people who inspired you, just the different methods of doing things a bit different, just thinking outside the box, I suppose.
Thinking outside my discipline, I guess, is probably, The box is pretty big, but sometimes we get a bit pigeonholed into our own disciplines, I think.
Sure. That's good. All right, great to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com, and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.